reheating food is very common, but for the elderly, the digestive system and immune system are weakened, so eating unsuitable foods can cause indigestion, loss of nutrients, or even poisoning. Below is a list: foods that should not be reheated for the elderly. 1. Green leafy vegetables: kale, spinach, amaranth, celery. In the diet of the elderly, green vegetables always play an important role because they provide fiber, vitamins, and minerals to help improve digestion, control blood pressure, and prevent constipation. However, one thing that few people pay attention to is that some green leafy vegetables such as spinach, amaranth, mustard greens, celery, or lettuce should not be reheated after being cooked, especially for the elderly. The reason lies in a seemingly harmless ingredient in vegetables: nitrate. Nitrates are naturally occurring compounds found in vegetables, especially conventionally grown, non-organic vegetables. When vegetables are first cooked, nitrates are not harmful. However, if the leftover vegetables are left to cool and reheated at high temperatures, the nitrates are converted to nitrites, an intermediate substance that can be dangerous to health. In the body, nitrites can react with amines in food or in digestive juices, forming nitrosamines, a substance that has been shown to cause cancer. This is especially worrying for the elderly, a group with weak resistance, poor digestive systems, and vulnerable to small changes in diet. In addition, nitrite also affects the process of oxygen transport in the blood. In the elderly with underlying cardiovascular or respiratory diseases, eating vegetables that have been reheated many times can increase fatigue and dizziness due to lack of tissue oxygen. It is worth noting that the amount of nitrite produced after reheating vegetables may not decrease even when reheated at high temperatures, because these are not bacteria or viruses but transformed chemicals. From a nutritional perspective, reheated vegetables also lose many important vitamins such as vitamin C and vitamin B, which are easily destroyed when exposed to high temperatures. Thus, not only is it harmful, reheated vegetables also lose much nutritional value. This is especially bad for the elderly, who need to be provided with adequate nutrients but eat less than young people. Therefore, the important principle when preparing vegetables for the elderly is to cook just enough for one meal. If there is any left over, it should be discarded, not kept for the next meal. In case of having to use leftover vegetables, they should be stored immediately after cooling, kept in the refrigerator for no more than 12 hours, and should only be warmed slightly, not boiled again. However, it is best to use fresh vegetables to ensure health, avoiding potential risks from this seemingly harmless habit. 2. Processed eggs. In addition to green vegetables, eggs are also a very popular and nutritious food in daily meals, especially important for the elderly because they contain high-quality protein, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and minerals such as iron and zinc. However, similar to green vegetables, processed eggs should not be reheated, because this can cause many health problems, especially for the elderly. When eggs are cooked and cooled and then reheated, the protein structure in the egg can change, making it harder to digest. Egg proteins are very sensitive to temperature, and if heated repeatedly, these proteins can denature, meaning their structure is broken down, losing their original nutritional value and increasing the burden on the digestive system. Elderly people, who have weaker digestive systems than younger people, are more likely to experience bloating, indigestion, and even stomach aches if they eat foods that are difficult to digest, such as eggs that are not reheated properly. In addition, during the process of reheating eggs, if the temperature and heating time are not controlled, some unhealthy compounds may also arise. For example, the fats in eggs can be oxidized, generating free radicals, the cause of inflammation, increasing the aging process of cells and adversely affecting the cardiovascular system, which the elderly should especially avoid. If eggs are left at room temperature for too long before reheating, the risk of bacteria growth is also very high, leading to food poisoning with symptoms such as nausea, diarrhea, fatigue reactions that are not mild for the elderly. In addition, processed egg dishes such as fried eggs, sunny-side-up eggs, or boiled eggs all contain high levels of fat and cholesterol. When reheated, this fat not only breaks down but also increases the ability to oxidize, which is not beneficial for the cardiovascular system, which is already weakened with age. Elderly people should limit reheated egg dishes and instead prepare fresh eggs for each meal, eating just enough to ensure nutrition and safety. Another thing to note is that if cooked eggs are left for a long time, the yolk can change, creating an unpleasant smell or color, indicating spoilage. Even if reheated, the unpleasant smell will not go away but will easily make the eater feel uncomfortable, reduce appetite, leading to poor eating and nutritional deficiencies. For the elderly, eating well is very important to maintain health and spirit. In short, eggs are nutritious foods, but if reheated incorrectly, they can cause many harmful effects for the elderly, from indigestion, bloating to the risk of poisoning and malnutrition. Therefore, it is best to prepare fresh eggs, just enough for each meal. If there are leftovers, they should be refrigerated immediately and reheating should be minimized. A fresh, safe meal will help the elderly absorb nutrients better while protecting their long-term health. 3. Chicken. Chicken and duck are two familiar food sources, rich in protein and essential nutrients, very popular in the meals of the elderly. Protein from poultry helps maintain muscle health, strengthen the immune system, and provide energy for daily activities. However, like other foods, chicken and duck should not be reheated many times, especially for the elderly, because this can cause many negative health consequences. The first reason comes from the fact that when cooked chicken or duck is cooled and then reheated, the protein structure in the meat can change. This process reduces the nutritional quality of the meat, making it difficult for the elderly to absorb essential amino acids. Furthermore, uneven or insufficient reheating can create conditions for bacteria to grow in the remaining meat. Bacteria such as Clostridium perfringens are common in meat foods and can cause food poisoning if not reheated thoroughly. This is especially dangerous for the elderly because their immune systems are weaker and their ability to recover slowly, making them susceptible to diarrhea, vomiting, and even serious infections. In addition, when reheating poultry, especially meat with skin and fat, the fats can oxidize, creating free radicals and compounds that are harmful to the body. These substances not only affect liver function but can also cause chronic inflammation and increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, a common problem in the elderly. Reheated chicken and duck can also change in taste and tenderness, making it less appetizing and more difficult to digest. Furthermore, if meat is not stored properly before reheating, for example, if it is left at room temperature for too long or not stored in the refrigerator, the risk of contamination and spoilage is even higher. Elderly people who eat such meat are at high risk of food poisoning symptoms, affecting their overall health and ability to absorb nutrients. This habit can also lead to dehydration and weakness, which is very dangerous for this age group. Therefore, the advice for the elderly and caregivers is to prepare poultry in sufficient quantities for each meal, minimizing the need to keep leftovers and reheat them. If you really need to keep leftover meat, store it in the refrigerator and reheat it only once, ensuring that the meat is heated evenly at high temperatures to kill bacteria. In addition, you should prioritize gentle cooking methods such as steaming and boiling instead of frying with a lot of oil to protect your health. In short, chicken and duck meat are valuable sources of nutrition, but if not handled properly when reheated, they will cause many problems for the digestive system and general health of the elderly. Paying attention to proper food processing and preservation not only helps to preserve nutrients but also protects the body from potential risks, thereby improving the quality of life for the elderly. For seafood, shrimp, crab, squid, fish. Seafood has long been known as a food source rich in protein, omega-3, vitamins, and valuable minerals, which are very good for health, especially for the elderly. However, seafood is also one of the foods that need special attention when processing and preserving, because they are very susceptible to deterioration and produce toxic substances if not handled properly. In particular, reheating seafood such as shrimp, crab, squid, fish, if not careful, can cause many dangerous risks to the health of the elderly. The first point of concern is that seafood is very susceptible to bacterial invasion and growth when left at room temperature for too long. Bacteria such as Vibrio parahemolyticus or Staphylococcus aureus can multiply rapidly on seafood that has been cooked but not stored properly. Even if reheated, if the temperature is not high enough and the time is not long enough, these bacteria may not be completely destroyed. Elderly people with weakened immune systems are very susceptible to food poisoning from eating such seafood, leading to symptoms of diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, or high fever, which can even cause serious health problems. In addition, reheated seafood can also produce toxic compounds, especially when seafood has been left for too long or not preserved properly. For example, some types of fish and shrimp contain a lot of protein and amino acids. When exposed to high temperatures many times, they can create heterocyclic amines, compounds that can cause cancer and are toxic to the liver and kidneys. In addition, seafood is also rich in unsaturated fatty acids, which when oxidized during repeated reheating, will turn into free radicals, agents that promote inflammation and premature aging. The smell of reheated seafood is also a big problem. When seafood is cooked, cooled, and then reheated, it often has a strong, unpleasant fishy smell due to the sulfur compounds released. This smell not only reduces appetite but can also cause stomach discomfort, affecting the elderly's ability to digest and absorb nutrients. In many cases, if the smell of seafood is too strong, it can signal that the food has begun to spoil and is no longer safe to eat. Therefore, for the elderly, the most important advice is to minimize reheating seafood. It is best to prepare just enough seafood for each meal, use it immediately when it is fresh, and avoid leaving it left over. If there is leftover seafood, it should be stored quickly in the refrigerator at a temperature below 4 degrees Celsius and should only be reheated once, ensuring even heating, reaching a safe temperature to kill bacteria. At the same time, priority should be given to processing seafood using gentle methods such as steaming or boiling to retain nutrients and limit the production of toxins. Thus, although seafood is a valuable food source, it also poses many risks if not handled properly, especially when reheated. Paying attention to the preservation, processing, and use of seafood properly not only helps the elderly absorb optimal nutrients but also minimizes the risk of poisoning and related diseases, contributing to improving the quality of life and long-term health. 5. Cooked potatoes and sweet potatoes. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are two very popular tubers in daily meals, providing a rich source of starch, helping to provide the necessary energy for the body, especially important for the elderly, a group that needs to maintain health and energy for daily activities. However, like many other foods, potatoes and sweet potatoes when cooked, cooled, and reheated are not always good, especially for the elderly. The main reason why potatoes and sweet potatoes should not be reheated is due to the nature of the starch in them. When potatoes are cooked and cooled, the starch in the potatoes can change into a form called resistant starch. This is a form of starch that is more difficult to digest, not easily broken down in the small intestine but goes straight to the large intestine, which can cause digestive problems such as bloating, indigestion, and even diarrhea, especially for the elderly with weak digestive systems or chronic intestinal diseases. When potatoes or sweet potatoes are reheated, especially by frying or reheating at high temperatures, the starch structure changes again, creating conditions for the formation of unhealthy compounds. Repeated reheating can cause potatoes to lose many nutrients such as vitamin C and some B vitamins, which are easily destroyed by high heat. In particular, in the elderly, a deficiency of these vitamins can affect immune function, increasing the risk of disease and reducing the ability to recover. In addition, potatoes can also contain small amounts of a natural poison called solanine, which is especially concentrated in the sprouted or green parts of the tuber. When left for a long time or stored improperly, the amount of solanine can increase. Reheating old potatoes or potatoes that show signs of sprouting can retain or even increase the activity of this toxin, causing mild poisoning with symptoms such as nausea, headache, and abdominal pain, which is very dangerous for the elderly with weak resistance. Another thing to note is that after cooking, sweet potatoes are left to cool and then reheated, especially if they are fried again. Harmful substances such as acrylamide can form, a substance that is considered to be carcinogenic according to some studies. Therefore, overusing reheated fried sweet potatoes is not a safe choice for the elderly. For the above reasons, it is best for the elderly to eat potatoes and sweet potatoes when they are just cooked, and not to leave them for too long and then reheat them many times. If there is any left over, it should be stored in the refrigerator, and it should not be left at room temperature for too long and should only be heated gently, avoiding boiling or frying them many times. The best way to prepare them is to boil or steam them, which helps to preserve nutrients and makes them easier to digest. In summary, although potatoes and sweet potatoes are nutritious and necessary food sources, improper reheating can change the starch structure, causing indigestion and loss of nutrients, and at the same time, there is a risk of producing toxic compounds, affecting the health of the elderly. Therefore, paying attention to processing and preservation is very important to protect health and help the elderly absorb nutrients more effectively in their daily meals. In daily life, especially for the elderly, choosing and using safe, nutritious foods is extremely important. However, not all foods can be reheated while still retaining their nutritional value and ensuring health safety. Through the above analysis, we can see that green vegetables, eggs, poultry, seafood, potatoes, sweet potatoes, familiar foods and meals, all need to be processed and preserved properly. Reheating incorrectly or too many times can reduce nutritional quality, create toxic compounds and cause discomfort to the digestive system, especially for the elderly with poor resistance and digestive function. Therefore, the elderly should prioritize using fresh food, eat just enough, do not leave it for too long, and if necessary reheat it should only be done once at the right temperature. In addition, storing it in the refrigerator properly also helps prevent bacteria from growing and keeps food safe. Paying attention to these things will help protect health, improve the quality of life for the elderly, avoid foodborne diseases, and help maintain essential nutrients for the body. Thank you for taking the time to listen and follow. Hopefully, these shares will help you and your family gain more knowledge to take better care of your health, especially in your daily diet. Wishing everyone good health and happiness with your loved ones. If you find the content useful, don't forget to like, share and follow to receive more useful information.